Hey everyone, welcome to Keto and Crime. Welcome to our lunchtime live stream. Today I am honored to have a really good friend of mine joining me. I have JB Gunner from True Crime with JB Gunner, as well as many other channels. He's a 16-year veteran on YouTube and is both a true crimer, a political commentator, a gamer. He does a little bit of everything. I've also mentioned him quite a few times on the channel. So I'd like to, JB, introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's good to be with you. Definitely appreciate you. I'm JB Gunner. I pretty much cover everything. I've done this for 16 years, 3 silver play buttons. I've been around the block a little bit. Just a dude on the internet giving my opinion on shit. You know what I mean? That's pretty much what it is. And you know, with this true crime thing and things of that nature, news in general, it's kind of my passion, just to kind of be opinionated, I guess. And me and Keto and Crime go back a couple years on there, and I'm honored to be here and talk to you about whatever it is we're talking about.
All right. Well, you are kind of a newbie in true crime. Tell us a little bit how you got into that.
Well, I was doing all of my old content, and every 5 or 6 years, my channels go down. You know, most people think that when you're kicked off YouTube, you're gone for good. There's actually a loophole around that, right? There's actually a loophole around that, and it's that you don't own your channels, because the technical rule is that you can't own a channel once you're kicked off. But you can be an independent contractor and someone else owns the channel, and you could be the talent. So I kind of moved around that, but I was doing like news stories anyway. So I did a lot of true crime stories. I just never did the deep dives. And so this last time when my channels went down, I was doing the Debbie Collier case. And when I came back, I just created a true crime channel. And when I did that, it blew up. Like first 2 months, 5,000 subs. I'm like, all right, cool. Okay, this is working. And you know me, I deep dive in everything anyway. So because of my techniques, for it to switch those same techniques over to the true crime genre, and to be perfectly honest, a lot of the true crime people don't have the background I have when it comes to just criminality, to be honest. And so they're not speaking from a place of experience. When it comes to like court cases and the actual process of going through trials and being involved, being around people that's done things like this, you know, it just wasn't something. You know, my father's been he got 7 life sentences. So like, this is something that I've always been connected to. I just never thought I would like add it, but I love it now. I enjoy it. It's a hobby. I get into like dark stuff anyway. I'm a big horror movie guy. Of course, I watch, true crime shows on television. And basically, just to be able to give my input on it, it was fun, and then it turned serious. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Well, JB has one of the distinction of being one of the most banned people on on YouTube. He's right up there with Keemstar and Steven Crowder as far as that goes. And he's every bit as controversial as those two. So this will be a spicy live stream. We're going to have some fun. And if you go over to his channel, put your thickest skin on,
Yeah. It's not for everybody.
No. So with that being said, first we're going to dive into an update on a case that I've been following since the beginning, the Lori Vallow Chad Daybell case. This was from 2018. It involves LDS cult murders. And basically it's just a little bit of an update. Was informed that unfortunately the judge is banning cameras from the trial.
Don't you hate that shit? Don't you hate that shit?
I do. I mean, this is already out in the public sphere. I mean, they let it happen with Kyle Rittenhouse. Why don't they just let it happen with this one? I mean, I know they're doing it for the Murdaugh trial right now, but
your tax money pays for these trials. Why can't you watch it? You know what I mean? Like it makes no sense. This is not like a private affair in any of these trials. I think every last one of them should be broadcast. I mean, because if you lived in the city, you could go there, right? So, so I don't understand. It's supposed to be the public forum. It's not trials that aren't private. But go ahead, my bad.
Okay. Oh, no, no. And so basically the judge has reruled that that will not be happening. We're also kind of anticipating that it's a husband and wife that were involved in the murders, involved the murder of the husband's ex-wife and the wife's two children from a previous marriage, as well as her former husband, even though that one's still kind of ambiguous. But she has been deemed unfit for trial several times because in Idaho, there is no not guilty by plea of insanity. So instead, if you're deemed insane, you can't be tried at all. So she's pulled that card a couple of times. And so now she's competent again. We don't know how long that'll take, but now they have petitioned to sever the trials. And we're obviously looking for that to probably happen. So there's probably going to be 2 trials, and it looks like we're not going to get those until the end of 2024 or 2025, sadly. And the victims' families, the Woodcocks, the 2 children, they are petitioning the judge and asking the judge to please allow cameras in the courtroom because they want it documented. So they're on our side, the victim's family. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But so that's a quick update on that. And now we'll jump into what JB is an expert on, and that is the Idaho Four. What do you think? Give us your spiel on the Idaho Four.
All right. When it comes to the Idaho Four, I think that, all right, number one, this is a horrendous crime, obviously. I will say that. But also, there's so many twists and turns. It seems straightforward. Like everybody is believing Brian Kohlberger, all because that's what they said. Here's the thing. If you followed it from the beginning, you will see so many. Number one, I think the internet did some damage with this case. It's hard to find legit information. Number two, the gag order has affected it. So once again, even though there's leaks, you don't know if the leaks are legit. My take on this, on the entire story, is that obviously we have a drug house, a party house with these kids. It's a college house, and a lot of people want to defend the kids and say, okay, don't victim shame. It's not victim shaming to say, look, these are college kids in a known party house. Police had been there several times. It's obvious there was drinking and partying and drugs there, right? Fast forward, the suspect is a heroin addict. 2 of the victim's parents, oddly, had the lawyer he currently has, and they both had drug cases. Follow it. You see what I'm saying? Clearly, in my opinion, drugs are involved here, but also because it's a college town, I believe there's a little bit of cover-up, a little bit of, you got to realize, Moscow, Idaho, 50% of their entire little county's revenue comes from the college.
I said that the whole thing was covered up from the beginning because if the college dries up, if there's no college students there, there's no economy there. You know,
exactly.
The mayor came out right away and said that this is, not a serial killer. This is, what have you. But yeah, it's like tourism. So.
No, that's exactly. Go ahead. That's exactly what it is. And so like, it's kind of like, okay, let's use Disney World or Vegas or any tourist attraction, right? Do you think that if there was like a quadruple homicide and it happened on one of Disney's properties or anything like that, don't you believe Disney would do the absolute most that they could to sweep it under the rug? Because they don't want to scare you to where you stop bringing your kids to Disney.
How many accidents on their rides have they covered up? They tried to cover up the whole alligator that killed that young boy.
I was just about to mention the alligator. I was there when all that happened. No, because I used to go to Disney. I used to live in Florida, as you know, and I used to go there I had annual passes. So that whole alligator cover up is a great point. That's exactly the point. Is when tourist dollars are kind of your thing. I mean, it's smart business to kind of sweep shit under the rug. And so I think in a lot of ways we had that same thing here because this is the only case I've ever watched where the authorities came so hard after internet people. Like they were from the very beginning, against internet sleuths, true crime people. Like they didn't want you digging at all. And in fact, you know, if you watch the Moscow Police Department's YouTube page and all of their announcements, they made it almost in every video. They made it very, very clear. Don't listen to the internet people. Now we're finding out that the internet people was extremely correct. And it depends on who you were listening to, right? Today we found out, or actually it was last night, that indeed we found out that last night that Ethan was actually killed in the doorway. I said this shit 2 months ago, that Ethan's body was found in the doorway, and everybody was like, where did you find that information? Where did you know what I'm saying? And everybody, you get these group of people that are like, if it wasn't released from the police department, you can't believe it. You can't say it. You can't talk about it.
Wasn't Zana also found outside off the bed, like on the floor as well?
Yes, she actually fought. We found that out last night as well. In the beginning, this was things that we had already talked about, but then they changed the story. From the beginning, I said the order was went upstairs, killed Kaylee, killed Maddie, came back down through all of it. Because remember, Xana was already awake. Xana ordered food.
On TikTok. She was on TikTok.
TikTok at 4:12, exactly at 4:12. If you look at the time frame, 4 o'clock, Grubhub or whatever the fuck, it was delivered. Around that same time, Brian Kohlberg comes. 4:12, Xana's still on TikTok. 4:17 is when they saw his car leaving the residence. You know how quick these murders actually happen? Like, that's a very quick window of time. If you take into consideration the Grubhub, the TikTok, because think about that. You know, because a lot of people are like, well, couldn't she have just left her TikTok on? I want you to just think about how this is. The food bag and the food was still on the kitchen counter. Something isn't right here, because I want to think about it. When you order food, are you just going to sit it on the kitchen counter, go back in your room and start scrolling TikTok? Probably not. You're going to eat.
I'm going to go eat it and scroll TikTok while I'm eating it, most likely.
Yes. But the drink was still there. The food was still there. And then oddly, 17 minutes after the Grubhub was delivered, that's when he leaves. But 12 minutes later, she's still on TikTok. So something wasn't right here. But like I said, we found out Ethan, he was actually in the doorway, just like we said 2 months ago. And then she is the one to put up the fight. Which is, I can imagine what probably happened. As you got the dog barking upstairs, he's killed Maddie and Kaylee. He's coming down. And this is why I do not believe the whole Dylan didn't see anything shit. Because think about it. More than likely, they hear him up there murdering them. He's coming down the stairs, passes Dylan's room, goes over into to go towards that. Ethan knocked him a little bit. He's like, oh, kill him immediately. And he kills him. Obviously, behind Ethan is going to be Xana back in the bed, probably screaming, probably crying, whatever the case. Then he finishes that. You cannot tell me that did not wake Dylan up. And when he walks out, he literally passes right by it. And what everybody is saying is because he had visual snow. He didn't see Dylan. Bullshit. There's no way. There's no way. There's a reason he left Dylan alive. There's something going on there. I'm not sure.
That was my question. How was that roommate still alive? And why did they wait like 6 hours to call the cops?
Getting rid of dope, getting rid of drugs, is what I think. But okay. Brian Kohlberger, people keep talking about that his phone kept pinging off that place 12 times in the months leading up to it. In my opinion, number one, he only lived 8 miles away. So that's possible anyway. But let's fast forward. If it's a drug house and Brian Kohlberger's into drugs, if you're a drug person, wouldn't you visit drug houses often? 12 times doesn't seem like that many times. If you're a druggie and that's a drug house, just saying, it seems the pattern I see is a potential druggie and his friend regularly go now. I bet you we find out by the end of this trial that Dylan and Brian knew each other. Now, it could have been Dylan's boyfriend that typically provided Brian with some dope or whatever. But in my opinion, they knew each other. What evidence do I have for that? Dylan pointed him out in a lineup. Now, remember her statement on the affidavit. She said he had a mask on and all she saw was bushy eyebrows. That could be anybody.
Right.
But she pointed him out in a lineup. How is that possible? In the dark, you see him, you point him out in the lineup, he doesn't see you. And on my videos, I showed how small that corridor is. Mm-hmm. Like the corridor from Ethan's room, or from Xana's room, to where Dylan was at, and then going into the kitchen. And listen, man, even though Brian was small, skinny-wise, he's not even skinny. There's still not that much room. So if Dylan had came out 3 times because she heard sounds, in my opinion, especially if she saw him, I don't believe he didn't see her. There's no way. And people keep saying, well, maybe he was exhausted. Maybe he was tired. I don't give a damn how tired I am, right? I don't care how tired I am. If I walk by you and I just killed 4 people, you're not surviving. That's just my take on this. Of course, there's a lot of hearsay and victim bashing.
Well, yeah, we're not bashing any of the victims, Donna. We're just, these are just questions that we have, and it's just opinion. This is all opinion here. We're not claiming to have the actual, correct theory. It'll all come out in the trial, hopefully. I think they've got the right person. Yeah, I think maybe that we're just going to see a lot as we come up with motive and what actually happened.
I think they got the right person too, but I don't think they have enough evidence to convict him.
Not yet, anyway.
Well, here's the thing. Anyone that's been through these cases, like in legit, like not watching crime TV, like been through these cases, been arrested, will tell you that your affidavit usually has a good 80 to 85%, sometimes 100% of what they have against you. It's just kind of the way it works. And so people keep saying, well, you got to understand they're going to have a whole bunch more evidence. And my question to them always is the same. What makes you say that? Like, what makes you think that? Have you ever been through a criminal case? Have you ever been through a murder trial? Have you ever been through any of this? If the answer is no, then you're just guessing. You're speculating more than I am, because I've been through all of those cases. And so my point that I'm trying to make is anytime I've ever been involved in a case, the affidavit is pretty solid, right? Like I know what they have. And even with that, yes, he shows the layout of the house. That's awesome. But my take on this is that when you look at this whole concept, they're going to give you the best evidence because that's how they're going to get the arrest warrant. The best DNA they have right now is the touch DNA on the knife sheath. That's not enough, because that still does not place him at the scene. There's nothing that places him at the scene, period. And there's speculation. There is definitely circumstantial evidence. As a case, I believe he did it. I just don't believe that a good defense attorney can't beat this case. I don't believe there's going to be breaking evidence that we haven't seen. Now, what I do think, based on the reading of the documents, is that there could potentially, just based off what I see, there could be an informant. There could be someone talking. And if that's the case, now that could do him in my opinion. That could do him.
Dylan is some sort of informant. I mean, we don't know. We don't know.
Or if he had an accomplice.
Not bashing her. We're not saying she was in on it. My question was, how was she left, alive? And why was there a 6-hour gap between the time that happened and the 911 call was placed? That's just a little sketchy.
Well,
I can't get that out of my head.
Can I ask you, because everybody's saying it, that she was frozen in fear for 8 hours. You believe that?
It's possible, or she could have just had been drinking and fell asleep. I mean, it's happened to all of us. I mean, there is plausible explanations for that, but it's still a question if you're an investigator that you have to ask.
I agree with that. I agree with that completely. I think 'cause I like what you're saying better. I do think that because I'm a drinker. Is it possible, like, you could see some shit that's not normal and be like, to hell with it, and just go back and go to sleep, right? That is possible.
Yeah, and if it's a party house, they're probably used to hearing all kinds of weird sounds.
But remember, she said she was frozen in fear. What would you be frozen in fear for? Remember, those are her words in her testimony. So, in terms of the affidavit, if she said that she was frozen in fear, then that means she wasn't looking at it as, oh, this is just a party house and I just see somebody, right? That means at that moment, she believed something was wrong. Think about it. Out of her own testimony, she heard whimpering, crying. She heard specific sentences that came out, including "I'm here to help you." You see what I'm saying? Like, she was able to remember quite a lot for being frozen in fear. I'm just saying, it's quite a lot. So I think that I think it's a bad move to just mark her off the list. I think, now don't get me wrong, you have to tiptoe around it, right? Because, but here's everybody else keeps calling her a victim. A victim of what? What was she a victim
Randy
of?
said in the movie Scream, everyone's a suspect until someone's found guilty. I mean, really.
My position on this is okay. She saw a hideous crime. Seeing a crime doesn't make you a victim. Well, she didn't even see it. She was there when it occurred. She was the most I think we could say is that she's a survivor. But is she? If it was purposely he didn't kill her, is she a survivor? A survivor of what? If he decided not to kill her, what did she survive?
Or if she was not visible to him and did, well, then she's a survivor.
And I'll give her the benefit of the doubt, though. I will give her the benefit of the doubt, and I think we have to. When I see people immediately say, well, she had the door cracked, and so he didn't see her. My question to them will always be, where did you get that information? Because I've read every document, I've seen everything. That information does not exist. That is just as much speculation. That is just as speculative as me saying I speculate she saw him, right? To definitively say she didn't see him. The door was cracked. He didn't. That's pure speculation. There's not a single article, there's not a single document pointing to that as a fact. You see what I'm saying? And there's not a single document saying that, there's not a single piece of evidence, there's not a single medical person that's saying, that she was definitely frozen for 8 hours. Is it possible? Yes, but it's rare. It's rare. And then there's all kinds of stuff about her making calls to her friend. Now this is speculative. There's potential. She's made calls to other people, her friends. This part isn't speculative. Prior to calling the police, if Ethan's body was found in the doorway, for what reason would you call friends before the police? This is a brutal crime. The police said they can smell the blood. That means she could too. You're telling me someone brutally stabbed and murdered and body in the hallway, and you're going to call your friends before you call the police? Everything's speculation.
It could be that, or Roberta Glass and I had a discussion about this, that maybe this generation, they would be Gen Z, I would think. Maybe they're just desensitized to a lot of stuff. Maybe they're that withdrawn. I mean, that could potentially be. I mean, I don't know a whole lot of Gen Zers in real life, but it could potentially be that with, they're always on TikTok. They have such a short attention span that maybe they don't pay attention to that kind of thing. I mean, that's possible.
I can agree. It's definitely possible.
It is all speculation. Absolutely, Don. Everything we're talking about here is we're just two regular people on the internet discussing a case. We're not pretending to be. But Ron had an interesting question for you, JB. she said, "What do you think about Brian asking if anyone else was arrested?"
I think that, and when it first came out, of course, that it could have been one of two things. Either he was trying to throw people off,
Mm-hmm.
or he asked it for a reason. I know that if I get arrested for something, I'm not going to typically ask you, did anybody else get arrested for this too? Unless there is somebody that could be arrested for it. Now, there's a lot of people that say, well, no, he was a PhD student. Maybe he was trying to mentally throw them off. Okay. So if you believe he's that smart, then you can't possibly believe he was dumb enough to make all them other mistakes. You see, because this is the catch-22 that they catch themselves in. Because the same people that's saying he's smart enough to try to trick the police like that is also the same people that believe that he broke every rule in the book. He left DNA. You either believe he's dumb or he's not. You see what I'm saying? It's got to be one or the other. We cannot sit here and say he was genius enough to try to make this decision to throw everybody off, but he was dumb enough to fuck everything else up here. In my opinion, there was a second person. Now, I'm not going to name names and say what, because that is too speculative. I'm not going to sit here and say, like, the guy that died in the FBI, the SWAT team shootout. I'm not going to name him specifically, but I will say that it makes sense to me that him and another person would have potentially been going to a drug house for drugs, and maybe the other person did do this. That's completely speculative. In my opinion, if you look back at Brian's survey, his survey that he had on Reddit for his students and for people like this, for other people on Reddit, it seems to me like he was doing some recruiting. So I do believe you, and I do believe other people. I believe the law enforcement has the right guy. Mm-hmm. I believe he is the guy behind this. I'm just not 100% sure that he did it alone. To me, think about 4 people. Mm-hmm. I want you to think of the energy it takes you exert. And if you take a knife and just imagine, or you don't even have to actually have a knife. Use that same motion. Take like your remote, and just go to your bed at some point and stab into your pillow. And also that understand. That's not the same energy that you would even exert in this situation, because the amount of pressure that it takes to actually stab someone and then potentially to death. Now, they are saying Ethan had his throat slit, which is weird because if you look at when this thing first happened, the coroner said it was just stabs. Mm-hmm. Because they were specifically asked by Ashley Banfield, was there any slashes? And she said no. But the leak last night said that Ethan had his throat slit. I'm curious to see where that goes. I'm curious to see, because to me that makes a difference. You know what I'm saying? On how much energy was exerted. I don't know if you think so.
Robert, you were bad. Not even going to comment on that, but that's funny. That made me chuckle.
That is funny.
But so I'm going to respond here to ATL transparency. Mm-hmm. Okay. Possibly they had, they believe that the police are violent. Possibly these kids have seen all the, the news, that we've seen about not gay, but police doing, overexerting force. I mean, that's always possible. But what I will say is that these were, okay, I'm just going to lay it out there. These were white kids in the middle of a white town at a predominantly white college with a small town police force. I don't think fear of police would play into this as much as if these were black kids in a bad neighborhood in a crack house, so you kind of have to look at it. It's possible, but I don't think fear of police would be a motivation for not calling the cops.
Think about how many times the police have been there.
Yeah.
Those people, if you look at any of the body cam footage, those people were really comfortable talking to the police. Though you didn't see fear. Like, it's a small town. You can imagine how many campus police they bump into. They seemed very comfortable talking to the police. And let's just call it what it is. If you're a college age, pretty much good kid, you're going to feel comfortable talking to them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially if they had been using marijuana, which I don't believe is legal in Idaho. So, it's possible. That is very possible. But we may never know why the police weren't called. Hopefully that will come out at the trial. The thing that JB and I can agree on, that we can all agree on, is that we want justice for these 4 kids. Absolutely.
I do. I don't think justice is possible, though. And this is one of the things. I do believe in vengeance. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that justice can, when you're talking about murder victims, you know what I mean? And this is one of the words I try to stay away from in the true crime community, because there is nothing you can do to Brian Koberger, or like in the Simon case to Leilani Simon, that's going to somehow make up to Quentin Simon or to these 4 kids for what I don't believe is true justice. Now, I'm an eye for an eye type of guy. The closest thing you can get to justice is killing Brian Koberger or killing Leilani Simon, in my opinion.
Which Idaho does have the death penalty. So
yes, it's the closest thing you can get. But even then, I'm just when these cases end and people get arrested or get sentenced or get the death penalty, you'll hear people say, well, look, finally there was justice. No, that the murder victim's never coming back. You see what I'm saying? Like, for me, it's a piece of justice, but you can never truly get justice, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, so I kind of stay away from that, for just me personally, because it's
okay. Well, maybe the right word is closure. I want to get closure for their family.
Closure works. You know what I mean? Now that's true. That's true.
But so with that being said, we're going to switch topics a little bit here, everyone. We're going to go over closer here east to Atlanta, and the terrible case of the gay couple that was basically convicted of, how should I say, abusing their children. We're just going to say that. JB, you live on the East Coast like I do, so what's your take on this?
I told y'all. That's all I'm gonna say. I told y'all. Look, man. I'm gonna say some things that's gonna offend everybody. I'm gonna try to say it the best way as possible. And I know your circumstances, Keto. I know exactly.
I am gay. People here that don't know. Same relationship.
In my opinion, and my opinion has always been that the nuclear family is what raises the best children. So when I see things that I consider, whether someone's gay, whether someone's not gay, I consider a lot of sexual abnormalities kind of kink. And so when we're kind of looking at a situation like this, and in my opinion, not 100%, but generally speaking, children raised by homes that aren't a mother and a father, they grow up a little bit different, whether it's mentally or whatever. So when I see, I guess, let me try. I'm trying to watch what I say, because I don't want to offend your audience. Basically, the concept of 2 dudes raising a kid in this type of environment, I'm not surprised that it happened. So for us on the conservative side, we get to mark up a check. We'll say, see, I told y'all the kids can't be raised by these people. You see what I'm saying? Which, like I said, that's going to offend some. But for me, it's like when I see like a tranny or a gay kill themselves, I kind of say the exact same thing. Check mark, told y'all. Because it's not, in my opinion, it's not natural. It's not normal. It's not, there's going to be a mental defect somewhere along here. And so in this case, it had been, when I see this situation, I see 2 perverts. I'm not surprised what they did to their kids. And I know that's a harsh statement. I know it's a judgmental statement. I know for you guys that could be considered a bigoted statement, and I'm good with that. But ultimately, it's a horrendous crime, anything that happens to kids, but I'm not surprised at all, man. I'm not surprised at all, especially in Atlanta. You tell me that two people in Atlanta, a gay couple in Atlanta, pimped the kids out to local men and sent videos of them raping the boys. For us on the right, who tend to be anti this type of thing, we're just going to say what we always say. We told you so. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
Well, as somebody that's middle of the road, a little bit right leaning, I will say that I can agree with you that for people on the right, it is a check right down the line. But me, as a gay person, as a lesbian, as somebody in a same-sex relationship, it angers me for many different reasons. One, you're hurting children. And two, you're making those of us that are gay, that are just folks, look bad, that would raise children and raise them well. There's same-sex couples all over this country raising children and doing a great job as well as anyone could do.
I agree with you.
If my wife and I had children, we would make sure that they would have strong male role models in their life, because I do believe that's important. I believe it's important for any child to have a strong role model of both genders both sexes in their life. But this really makes me angry.
I want to touch on that second part that you said, because because that's actually a good point. And that's the problem with groupthink, and that's the problem with grouping people together. And it's because you're right, is that the actions of this couple will make people look at you and your wife and say, you know what I'm saying? It does make you kind of, it trickles down a little bit. And that's with any group of people, right? And that's kind of the negative part of this, of a lot of this, because I agree with you. I do think there's people like yourself, and I think there are examples of people that are exceptions to the rule that actually prove us conservatives wrong with some of that shit. You know what I mean? But cases like this, clearly, especially when we're talking about a child being harmed, when we're talking about a child going through this, it's everyone's going to probably. Every person, every child, every person is going to think to the extreme. So we're going to, to me, I'm ignorantly going to say, just take them away from all the gays. You know what I'm saying? Just fuck them. You know what I mean? And that's just being honest. So and I have to check my emotions at the door, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
No, it's great. And it's great that we can sit here and have this dialogue. We're polar opposite on a lot of views, and we can sit here and have this dialogue. And it kind of gives me hope that we can agree on some things, but yet peacefully disagree on some things. But what I think we can agree with is, if the death penalty could be brought into a non-murder case, these are the perfect examples, and you should televise it, because that's how I feel about anybody that hurts a child in any way, shape, or form.
I agree with that completely. I think everything should be transparent in these cases. Hell, and I think I'm gonna be honest with you. As much as I'm pro death penalty, I think cases like this needs to be added to it. You know what I mean? And televised. I think there should be a pay-per-view channel of all child molesters and people that do this shit. It should be an ongoing pay-per-view channel of just execution of these people. Just to be honest. But I'm also cynical. I'm also sick. So,
Well, JB, you can't be any sicker than me, because I grew up on horror movies. I wanted to be a mortician at one time in my life. And so I'm really into the macabre. So that would be right up my alley too.
Tell me you wouldn't pay $29.99 a month for that death penalty channel.
To see those two? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Exactly. And I agree.
There's no justifying it. And I think what we're looking at, like you said, is just people that will take this and run with it, because there's plenty of quote unquote straight people that, and I'll follow it while I'm saying that, straight people that also do this thing to their kids. It just doesn't get publicized because this happened to be a gay couple. It was publicized, but I don't consider them gay. I don't consider the straight people that do it straight. That's an entirely different, that's a disorder right there. And it starts with a P. I can't say it on YouTube, but we all know they come in all shapes and sizes.
I will say this, as I agree, to be perfectly honest and to kind of support what you're saying. By far, children are hurt more in volume by, so I'm not saying at all that trust me, straight couples and shit like this happens all the time. Yeah. So, but I do think it does shine a little bit of extra spotlight based on what happened to the boys. Because when you visualize this, and I don't want to say too much on YouTube because I don't want to like fuck your channel up. But when you think and you visualize what this happened, two dudes, the fathers, so to speak, and when we're not just talking about pimping them. We're talking about them.
Yeah.
Themselves, like, and then video it. Like, I can't think of it. In my opinion, this is more hideous than the Idaho Four.
Yeah. These children are going to be scarred for the rest of their life. There will be no justice for these children. They are going to fight with demons the rest of their life because of what was done to them. And that is just sickening. And I hope those children are getting the help that they need.
Absolutely. I don't think this is something you ever come back from, though.
No.
And I'm not even a big believer in mental health issues.
I'm a survivor of childhood abuse.
And
me too. It's still something that I think about. I do wonder because my victimizer was a female, and so I do. Even though I was having attractions to the same sex prior to that, I do wonder if that's somehow exacerbated. I can't help.
I mean, I'm going to say that, right? Where I'm going with this, right? Of course, I think that it played a part in it. But I also think it's because it normalized it. I don't know how old you are, but I know when I grew up, a lot of that shit wasn't considered normal, right? And as I'm 42 now.
I'm 46. I'll be 48 in April, so we're both Gen X.
Right. So as Gen Xers, we remember the time where it wasn't normalized. It was something that was completely.
It was very foreign.
Yes.
We didn't talk about it.
Yes. And so what we saw the normalization of it. And unfortunately with that, which is the part that I'm against, is the pushing of it as normal to the children. Right. And so, and in your situation, if you have or in these boys' situation, if you have a parent that you trust, not only normalizing it, but engaging in it with you, I think it does alter your brain. Whereas when I grew up, it was you're a man. You never suck a dick ever, ever, ever. That's the one thing you don't do, period. You know what I'm saying? And if you do, you're no longer a man. So it was beat into our heads a lot. And I think that I do think people are products of their environment. I believe that you are what you're taught to be. You know what I mean? In a lot of ways. I'm not saying that there's no nature involved in it. People are going to be attracted. People are going to be attracted to what they're attracted to. But I still think society programs you. Like, I'm attracted to murder. But society and normalcy has programmed me. I can't go out there and kill people. You see what I'm saying? So I do think that but if society ever normalized it and said, oh, no, it's cool. Like, if it ever became legal, I'd kill 10 people a day. You know what I'm saying? Just to be perfectly honest, because, I'm not a humanitarian. I think humans suck. But the only reason, so what I mean is, it's the normalcy thing. If something is made normal, if they determine something is acceptable, people tend to do it more often. And we see it with men dressing up as women. We see it. If you look at something, when we were born in our era, there was the percentage of at least declared homosexuals and things of that nature was a very small, I think 1.7
to 10% of Gen X as a whole.
And
it was even less for the baby boomers, and it was not existent for silent generation, at least that we, that was out. And then millennials was a little bit more. And now with Gen Z and probably the next generation, I mean, right now in certain states, it's at 50%. So
yes. Do you really believe that 50% of the entire generation is LGBT, whatever the fuck the letters are? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's
what I call them.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
no, absolutely not. It's a trend. It's a fad. And so my whole thing is, children should be left alone to be children. They know what they are, and they will grow into it or grow out of it at some point in their life. Leave them alone. Don't cut them up. Don't give them hormones. I believe, the same way about this whole new trend of giving overweight children now weight loss surgery. You don't need to be doing
Right.
that. They
Nah,
will
man.
grow. Most of them will grow out of their weight. And I'm not construing being transgender with weight loss. I don't want that soundbite to get out there, though it probably will. You should allow children to grow into whatever they want to be, because there's a lot of detransitioners out there. There's a lot of people that have went down a different path, and if you go that far, they have no chance to change if it is a fad, if it is a trend. And so in nature, you see homosexual behavior in 10% of species all around this globe. Why should it be any different than humans? We're just another species. So 10% should be right where it's hovering if it's natural. And so that's my thing. And it leads me to believe that 90% of these kids will grow out of it.
I think so, because let me give you a little bit of an example. When I was a teenager, right? Basically in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was this fad with women, right? Like every woman I would meet would all of a sudden be bi. But let me explain to you why. Because there was a pressure on them because of other chicks that were bi. Like if you knew that another chick would give me a threesome, you were kind of pressured into, well, now it was kind of the cool thing to be. If you were a bi chick, at least in that era, I don't know what it's like now. I'm old, but in that era,
too, if you buy me something real nice.
Yeah, there you see. There you go. Exactly. So there was a pressure. At least with those women, to kind of upstage the next or compete with the next one. So we went from literally nobody being bi to all of a sudden everyone was bi because they were competing, but they weren't really bi. What they were was they knew that to compete with the other women, they kind of had to do that. You see what I'm saying? Like now, I don't know if that period still exists today, but there was that period then. And we found out a lot of those women, especially because once you engaged in those threesomes or polyamory or anything with them, a lot of jealousy came because they really weren't bi. They were just doing it kind of for you to do you a favor, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then you realize later it really hurt them. And you know what I'm saying? And that's actually when I stopped doing those things is because I realized they didn't really want it. They were just doing it for me. Mm-hmm. And at that time it was a trend and everybody was trying. I think there was a lot of damage done, honestly.
Well, I'm going to throw something out at you. I think in general, at least in Western society, women are almost raised to be bisexual, because think about it. It's okay for little girls to hold hands, kiss their friends, hug their friends. Mm-hmm. We're taught as a society. I mean, even down to the food we eat, we drink milk, we eat eggs. Those are all feminine things. Maybe, and in general, lesbians are a lot bit more accepted in society than gay men.
100%. And let me tell you why that is. Because men typically dictate what's acceptable. You see what I'm saying? Like, let me give you an example. I can have a conversation with you as a gay woman and understand, because I like pussy too. So I understand it. I can't sit here and have the same conversation with a gay dude. I don't look at them as a man. Mm-hmm. I know that's bigoted. I know that it's going to be bothersome. But I'm sorry, as a man of you,
it's okay.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I can't do it.
Feel that way. Yeah. Well, we're not going to get graphic here, but a lot of men, because men have in the past set societal trends, they're okay because they see women as beautiful and soft and, sexual beings, and they can understand why a woman would be attracted to another woman, but they don't understand that about men. And
there's even women that agree with me. Like think about it. Like women that are straight women and not necessarily woke. The idea of two dudes kissing each other, it sounds gross to them, just like it does me. But to touch on what you said, women are softer. Women are more beautiful. So the idea of two beautiful, soft women doing it, and yes, we've been conditioned this way because ever since forever, think about it. How many times have you been hanging out with a woman and a woman's like, girl, you want to go to the bathroom with me? Like, it was normal. But if you were sitting around and you saw a dude like, hey, Jim, you want to go to the bathroom with me? You'd be like, what the fuck did I just see? You know what I mean? Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's not normal. And so we've been conditioned that way a long time. And whether right or wrong, it sticks with you. And this new generation isn't going to change that. And it doesn't. You know, I talk to a lot of younger people, and they, despite the woke progressive shit, they're like, nah, man, this shit's fucked up. Everything around us it's like a Twilight Zone, right? And you can clearly see it when we're talking about the drag queens and trans with the kids. You see, you're against things happening to the kids, and I believe you. Over sexualizing kids in any direction, whether it's straight or gay, trans, or whatever the fuck it is wrong. So having like kids go in bars watching trans people like dance, to me, it's
the same as taking them to a burlesque show or a strip club. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it.
Exactly.
There's a lot of gay people that feel that way. The majority of gay people feel that way. It's just the fanatics you see out there online. And don't look at online as the real world, people, because it's not. Let kids be kids. Let them watch cartoons. I remember at the age of 13, I was still more interested in G.I. Joe and Transformers than I was anything. And let kids be kids. And then they will grow into their own.
I remember the time when I thought girls had cooties and shit, and just was like, you know, I just want to play video games, man. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think, and I do think that's a problem, is that the over sexualization either way of children, I think is a problem. And that's why when I see people like libs of TikTok and things exposing some of it, I think that's awesome, because it doesn't really matter which direction you're taking them. Just let kids fucking play in the mud and play with games and shit. You know what I mean? Let's stop.
They should be thinking about that.
Yeah, like they shouldn't know if they're straight or not. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I knew my very first crush was on my kindergarten teacher, who was a female. And if Miss Trappenstid, you're watching, hi. But it really was. And I knew I didn't know what I was. I knew I just wanted to hold her hand, and I knew what that was. You know, I knew I had a crush on her, and then later on I had more crushes, and then eventually I came out. But I knew, and I didn't need to be told that. I just knew. And have you
ever had a boyfriend?
Yeah, I was with a man. I was in a relationship with a man over 10 years, but there was a caveat to that. He had a heart defect, and so intimacy was almost non-existent because of that. So it was kind of easy for me. But I still am good friends with him. I love him to death. He's one of my best friends. And I can love a man. I just don't want to be intimate with a man. There's a difference there, you know?
Have you ever had a positive experience being intimate with a man?
Not really. I don't want to get into all that. I don't want on my stream. But no. I really have never had what you would call a positive, mind-blowing experience.
I hear you. Well, me either. We have the same thing in common. So go ahead.
But with that, we're going to switch, and for the last few minutes, we're going to get into something that I think is one of the most hilarious crimes that I've seen. And JB and I talked about this before. But in Chicago, Cook County, there is a woman that was just she was a cafeteria manager for the Cook County schools. She was arrested and was out on $150,000 bond for stealing $1.5 million in chicken wings from Cook County schools. And here she
You can't tell me she don't look like you can't tell me she don't look like the exact person you would picture stealing $1.5 million in chicken wings.
I'm not going to comment.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I wasn't talking about race. I know. Okay. Well, but come on, man. She looks like she eats some chicken wings.
Oh yeah. Well, I look like I eat chicken wings. I love.
I like chicken wings. Yeah.
And, but it's just amazing to me how this even happened, because this started evidently in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And during the height of COVID, and the school was actually on lockdown, so no one was there, and they were supposed to be creating lunch for this is in South Side of Chicago, very low income. So they were
Yeah.
still providing lunches for the students and their families, but the school system had a rule for no chicken wings because the bones, it could, hurt children. So they didn't even serve them. But how did this administrator at a school, she's cafeteria manager. My mom was a
Mm-hmm.
cafeteria manager. They're under a lot of scrutiny.
Mm-hmm.
How did she order $1.5 million from Gordon Food Service and have it take 2 years for them to realize what happened? That shows you how mismanaged Cook County is and probably how mismanaged our government is overall.
I'm glad you
But
mentioned that. Because that's exactly what it shows you exactly where your tax dollars are not. Like this is, and we saw it with like COVID relief. We saw it with like the PPP loans.
mm-hmm.
Just in general, I'm not surprised that $1.5 million just was allowed to be swindled like that. But what is crazy is because I went to elementary school in those same areas. I'm from the South Side of Chicago, and to be perfectly honest, I've never seen chicken wings in any school lunch ever in my life. So, like, I'm surprised. How does that not draw a red flag? And think about how quick, rapid fire. Like, she ordered quite a lot in a very small period of time. It extended over 18 months, but the initial orders was like through the roof, and it's like just, and then she's just on camera and going in the school van to pick it up. I'm just like, how is this not caught?
It wasn't even going to the school. She was meeting the delivery truck and getting it. I mean, come on.
Exactly. And no, it's exactly, and looking past the funny part of all of this, just looking at it from a economic standpoint. Can you imagine how many different situations like this exist all over the country with your tax dollars, with the funding you think's going to these schools, going to these places? Can you imagine how much fraud and theft has actually happened? This is why socialism will never work. Because just in general, but this is why things like I'm just going to be honest. This is why I'm to the point now where I just believe in private schools. I believe in everything private, everything like you pay for what you want, whether it be healthcare, whether it be whatever the case. And so the story itself is sad because this money was meant to feed these children. And instead, this woman's probably sitting in the Chicago projects fleecing chicken wings for, what I'm saying, just selling chicken wings,
selling them or giving them out, or
because there's no way there's no way she ate 1.5 million.
No, she's selling them for profit, and
no different than the food stamp hustle. No difference. She just has the actual chicken.
Oh yeah, I can't. I in my time growing up, I grew up. Partially in a trailer park. My family has been known to buy food stamps because back then they were paper. It's a lot easier to get away with it. But yeah, we've done that, and it's the same kind of hustle, just on a larger scale.
Yeah. No, it's like I don't. Part of me is mad because I didn't know her. Because I would have bought a few. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But then part of me as an American citizen is mad that it happens. You know what I mean? And there's no part of me. I'm fully mad that it happens. But because I'm looking at it as something bigger than this case. This is just one case that we know about. Think about how many times this is probably going on with smaller numbers like $50,000 or $100. You know what I'm saying?
It could be $10,000 every so often.
Exactly.
And this only got the attention because she went crazy with the amount. She's a little stupid in how she did it. 1.5 million in chicken wings.
Well, and the story's funny.
Yeah, it is funny. I have to admit, but why isn't Lori Lightfoot looking into that?
No, it's because she bought some of the chicken wings. Lori Lightfoot, because she's sitting there eating the damn chicken with her. I see we got some of the gun squad popping up in here. Thank you guys.
Yes, thank you everyone. Well, JB, I got to get back to work, but I have thoroughly enjoyed this. This has been one of the best streams I've ever had. This has been fun. It's been engaging, and I hope we can do it again real soon.
Anytime. I hope I didn't trigger your audience too.
Oh, no.
Was I good? I thought I was pretty good.
You were great. JB and I had a talk before, and he was so nice. He was like, "Okay, so what can I say and what I cannot?" And I don't like censorship at all, but he was very nice and very gracious. Now, if you go over to his channel, if you're my subscriber, go over to his channel. He is totally uncensored. Just be prepared.
Yeah, watch out. My take, because my take on the chicken story over there is way different than my. Well, it's still the same take, but you saw I even started to go there, and I was like, "Oh no, don't do it, Jamie. Don't do it. Don't do it." All right. Love you. I love you, Keto and Crime, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for having me over here.
Absolutely. Everyone, go over and visit JB at True Crime with JB Gunner, JB Gunner TV, JB Gunner Live. I'll post all of his links down in the replay description. And with that being said, until next time, this is JB Gunner and Keto and Crime. We are out.